What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. Time for my Week 7 Top 25, and we're getting to that point where we now know, for the most part, about these teams. We know which teams are good, which teams aren't, which teams were overrated in the preseason, which teams are underrated. But still, there's a lot of work to do as far as figuring out these teams. For example, look at the measuring stick that Notre Dame is. You look at Louisville, Duke, and Ohio State, all teams that played Notre Dame. We think, wow, Ohio State, they beat Notre Dame, close game. We think Ohio State's good because we think Notre Dame's good. Louisville just beat Notre Dame, great win. So we think that Louisville is really good because they just beat Notre Dame. Duke played toe-to-toe Notre Dame, close game. We think they're pretty good. And then you look at Notre Dame, and you wonder, is Notre Dame really that good? Because you don't have enough. You don't have another game for Louisville. You don't have another game for Duke besides, I guess, Clemson. Ohio State hasn't played anyone else. So, yeah, we're starting to learn about these teams, but there is still some mystery out there. And the next couple of weeks, I think, will really give us a lot more. So I'm ranking these teams based off of how good I think they are, based off of what I've seen this year alone. And when I bring up the word resume is really just a tiebreaker. If I'm really close on two teams, I'm going to go with the resume. So let's get into it here, starting with 21 through 25. At the bottom, I've got Wisconsin back into the top 25. They've really looked impressive the last couple of games against Purdue and Rutgers. I know those aren't great teams, but still, I think Wisconsin's starting to put it together. Remember, their only loss coming to Washington State. That's a top 25 team for me. Kansas State bouncing back, very impressive this week after a tough loss to Texas. But the Jayhawks looking pretty good so far. And again, their only loss coming to Texas. Kentucky, tough loss to Georgia. Finally saw the Georgia team that we've been waiting to see. Kentucky still has a dominant win over Florida. I've still got them ranked. Missouri, a tough loss to LSU. That's a game you felt like they had a real chance to win. And if you didn't watch that game, there was a pick six late. Really, that was a one-score game, even though that's not what the scoreboard reads. I still think Missouri's a top 25 team. We'll see once they play a couple more good teams in the SEC. And then UCLA, number 21, big win over Washington State. And so it's really close with these teams in the Pac-12. UCLA, Washington State, Oregon State, and Utah. I'll explain why I ranked them the way that I did. So let's just go ahead and look at, because I've got them all right there in a row. UCLA at the bottom, and I know they just won, but then Washington State, Oregon State, Utah ahead of them. The reason I went with this ranking, you look at these teams, they're all very similar. They've all beat up on each other. Washington State has two good wins, so they have the win over Oregon State. Then they also have the win over Wisconsin. So they've got the best resume, in my opinion. And then Oregon State beat Utah. Utah beat UCLA. That's why I ranked the teams the way that I did. Utah also has the win over Florida, but they have the worst loss. They lost to Oregon State in a game that really wasn't even close. So that's why I ranked those teams the way I did. I think they're all very even. Utah with Cam Rising, I think, would be ahead of these teams, but they don't have Cam Rising. So it is what it is. So we go to 17. That's LSU. Very big win over Missouri. The offense is so good. The defense, though, is continue to struggle. Maybe they found something in that Missouri game, though. Second half, they played a lot better defensively. That's really why they won that game. So LSU starting to look pretty good, but still a couple of losses. That's why they're not ranked any higher. Duke at 16. They're 4-1. Didn't see them play this week. They had a bye week. And again, I mean, how good is Notre Dame? That's kind of the mystery right now. And then they have the one over Clemson, which was really impressive. Clemson not looking great against Wake Forest. Clemson actually fell out of my top 25. I don't just move teams up and down, though. It's a brand new top 25 every week, like I've talked about before. So let's move on now to 11 through 15. I still got Notre Dame up there pretty high. I think Notre Dame's a really good team. They've just played a tough schedule. They lost in the last play to Ohio State. They did get beat. Louisville did pull away there in that second half, but that was a close game for the most part. Again, late in the game, second half, Louisville did pull away. But yeah, I've got them there. To me, you have to rank Notre Dame ahead of Duke. They just beat them. Beat them on the road as well. So I'm not too concerned about the two losses when you've played a schedule that tough. They blew out NC State. This is still a good Notre Dame team. Ole Miss, number 14. Nice comeback win against Arkansas when they really weren't playing great. Rebels, though, the only loss coming to Alabama, and Alabama's a different team now than they were earlier in the year. USC at number 13. They continue to win, but they continue to struggle in these games, especially defensively. Yes, I've got USC as the bottom-ranked undefeated team in the Power 5. And again, just it hasn't looked good. They'll have a big opportunity against Notre Dame coming up to maybe prove themselves. But yeah, USC has not performed very well so far this season. North Carolina, number 12, very impressed with their win over Syracuse. The Tar Heels are looking like a real threat in the ACC, along with Louisville, who's at 11. I didn't have them ranked last week, but they jump all the way up to number 11 with this win over Notre Dame. We were just waiting to see them play good competition, and they delivered. Huge win for the Cardinals, and they have a really favorable schedule. So watch out for Louisville and North Carolina to potentially be teams that could take down Florida State in the ACC. Everyone really, expecting Florida State, I think, to run away with that conference. I don't think it's going to be quite that easy. Duke is in there as well, but they've got a really tough schedule. All right, 6 through 10, I've got Alabama at number 10, just ahead of them Texas. I think head-to-head, you have to go with Texas there. Washington and Oregon, I think both had bye weeks this week. They're both 5-0. They've looked good, haven't really been tested. They play each other on Saturday, so that'll be a huge game, obviously. Florida State at 5-0, an okay performance against Virginia Tech. Did let them hang around just a little bit. And they had to go to overtime to beat Clemson. Clemson really just not looking very good right now. Their win over LSU we thought was maybe better than it really was. The Boston College game was close. So that's why they've kind of slowly started to slide down, because other teams have done more, in my opinion, to move up. So let's just jump into the top 5 now. This is how I've got the top 5. So I've got Ohio State at 5, Georgia 4, Oklahoma number 3, Michigan 2, Penn State number 1. I'll go from top to bottom here. So Penn State, to me, still has been one of the most consistent teams in the country. Penn State and Michigan, they've been, in my opinion, the most consistent teams, the most dominant teams. Really have not struggled at any point. You could maybe say the first half against Northwestern, but that was kind of a fluky start to that game. They fumbled the opening kickoff, and it was just kind of a weird game. They showed their dominance in the second half. So for Penn State, Michigan, the battle for number 1, to me, is between those two teams. Penn State's got a better resume right now. They've got a win over West Virginia. They've got a win over Iowa. Pretty good teams. Michigan hasn't played anyone quite to that level. So that's why I've got Penn State still at number 1. Oklahoma number 3. So Oklahoma has not really struggled much. You could look at Cincinnati and Iowa State and say that those games were kind of close, at least for a while. But for the most part, they've dominated those types of teams, but their win over Texas, it's the resume here. That's why I've got Oklahoma ahead of Georgia and Ohio State. Those three teams all really close. I think Oklahoma does have the resume advantage. And Georgia, just the win over Kentucky, very, very impressive there. We've seen all these teams, with Georgia and Ohio State, we've seen them struggle at times. Look at the first half against Maryland for Ohio State. Look at the first half against South Carolina and Auburn for Georgia. So Georgia, Ohio State, really, really close there. I just feel like Georgia has been better on both sides of the ball. There's just something's off with Ohio State's offense. Now, their defense has been really good, and that's, you could look at the points they put up against Maryland. It was really their defense. That's why they scored those points, because defense came up with some big stops, gave the ball back to the offense, short fields, and they finally made some big plays in that second half. But these are the top 5 for me. I don't really think that there's a ton of debate. Maybe you put Florida State, Washington, Oregon in this conversation, and maybe you move the teams around in different orders. But I feel like it's pretty clear as far as who the top teams are right now. You could say, look at Alabama, the way they're playing now. It's different. They're obviously a lot better. Jalen Milroe has already improved a ton. So it's going to be really interesting, but that's how I'd rank the teams right now. I'll probably do a playoff video, give you my updated playoff predictions later in the week. I would love to get your thoughts on my top 25, and give me your top 25 down in the comments below.